So is this it?
Yeah, it's been simplified.
Do we go on and start? Are we waiting for a bell or how's that?
I think it's up to you. You can, I mean, I can give a little introduction. This is Mr. Dan Oliver. He's the founder of Dinos Seasoning. It's a company that's based in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's kind of taken the TikTok and social media world by storm over the past few years with the pandemic. Their business has seen a lot of success and has been continuously growing. And so I brought him in to have him speak. I think on a unique perspective on starting a business and keeping it going. Mr. Dan Oliver.
Well, so, what you said in your email to me was what's cool about Dinos is I started it from nothing. So, how did I start from nothing? I started with a recipe. As a kid growing up, I always wanted to start something, create something, own my own business, and I never knew what it was going to be. But I always loved to cook too. So I was never really the school type. I was always just like really good at, I guess, hustling things. Like I was a good pool player. I was a good bartender. I was a good salesman. I was in insurance sales. I came up with the recipe for actually Dinos when I was in college. It was, I had some chicken in the freezer, nothing else to eat. And my buddy's like, thaw that chicken out, and he just started throwing all these seasonings together, and we put it in the oven, and the chicken ended up being amazing. And so the next day I was like, I'm going to get some more of that bone-in, skin-on chicken. When I was 18, 19 years old, I was just used to like boneless, skinless chicken. Well, so here I am buying this bone-in, skin-on chicken, I'm experimenting. And so I kind of developed my own little recipe of all these herbs and spices that I would use just to make this bone-in, skin-on chicken. And so for years, for like 15 years, anytime I was cooking for family or cooking for friends, I remember this little concoction that I had, and I would grab these herbs and spices and I'd put them together. And I'd mix them all together in a bowl, put it on this chicken, and it ended up being the best chicken you ever had in your life. And so I had this recipe, never thought to package it, never thought to call it Dinos. I had this recipe for literally 15 years, but I was always thinking bigger ideas. I actually spent about $1,500 of my hard-earned money on a disposable toothbrush idea, because I had this idea if you could carry a toothbrush in your pocket that you could use one time and then throw it away. I spent money on this, and I had all these other ideas that were like, ideas that took millions and millions of dollars to like start this business. So I was this guy that just always had these ideas. I was an idea guy. Got tons of ideas. If y'all want to talk about ideas, we can talk all day because I got tons of ideas. But so I never really had anything I could sink my teeth into. And so from college, I went into insurance sales. I did that for 2 years. And then I got into manufacturing sales. I worked for electronic engineers, and I went around, I traveled the country for like 5 years, really more around Louisville, Kentucky, like 100-mile radius, going to manufacturers, watching how they made equipment, whether it's making pencils or these tables or melting steel, anything. We would fix the electronic equipment. So it gave me a good background knowledge of manufacturing and whatnot, machines, dealing with people. And so when I lost that job, I wanted something, I didn't want to be necessarily in like the corporate world anymore. So I went and I started cooking at this little pub and billiards place, and then I became a bartender because I knew bartenders made good money. And then after so many years, I was like, oh, how am I going to get out of here? I didn't like this lifestyle. And so I told you all goes back to I had this recipe for like 15 years or so that I used. on this chicken. Well, I'd always loved to cook for people. So as I'm sitting here, my wheels are spinning all the time. How am I going to get out of this lifestyle? How am I going to get out of the bar? I'm always thinking like these $1 million ideas, but I don't have $1 million. And so it was one day that I would bring in this chicken, and people already love the chicken I bring in. They're like, oh, make some more of that chicken. How'd you make it? They want to know my recipe, whatever. And I'd be like, oh yeah, just mix this stuff together and here you go. And still, it wasn't called Dinos. It was just my recipe. And actually, I went by Danny for the first 35 years of my life. Everybody called me Danny, not Dan. And so I came in on a Monday at 5 o'clock one day, and there was literally one person there, and he was waiting to play a pool game. He was waiting for somebody to come in. And I brought in my chicken, and I said, hey, are you hungry? I got this chicken that I made. And he said, yeah. So I gave him some of this chicken, and he took one bite, and he's like, this is the best chicken I ever had in my life. Why aren't you selling it? And the light bulb, like, literally went off. I remember, like it was yesterday, I was like, Dinos. And it's like, that was it. And so I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start this product called Dinos. And so I literally, when it comes to like, sorry, I get a little choked up sometimes. I'm so passionate about it. But when this idea hit me, I had this background. I had a whole family of entrepreneurs that own their own business, but they're all in like insurance and financial planning and stuff like that. Nobody really knew anything in the food space. And so I knew I had this awesome idea, and I was like, well, I gotta figure out how to do this. So I'm watching YouTube, I'm watching Google, and trying to figure out how do you start a seasoning business. Well, there's not a lot of people out there that start seasoning businesses. So it was really hard to find the information how to start these businesses. So I had to go to like the FDA. I had to reach out to the health department, figure out how I can start mixing stuff and put it in a bottle and how it has to be packed, and figure out label restriction, label requirements, product requirements, like everything that you had to do to put a product and sell it to people. I had to figure it all out from scratch. So Google was my best friend. And then I had to go into the, figuring out, here's my recipe. I had to start weighing everything out. Then I had to make the recipe right to go into a package. And so I remember like whipping up my recipe, and I would have like 10 different variations of it that were all just slightly different. Like this one would have a little bit more cumin, this one would have a little bit more rosemary, this one would have a little bit more salt or what have you. And I would make like 10 chicken legs, each one of them coming out like 20-minute spaces. So like I would have all these chicken legs, and every 20 minutes I was like take one bite of a different chicken leg, so I could like get the different flavor profiles. So until I got my recipe like zoned in, like okay, this is it. So it took me about, my aha moment when I was like, okay, Dinos, was around January 2015. And so what I did, I started the business on April 13th, 2015. And when I started the business, I didn't have a product to sell. I just knew that I had this idea, and I was gonna start this business, and I was gonna sell my seasoning. Well, so registered the business on April 13, 2015, didn't sell a single, I didn't have a bottle to sell till late 2016. So my first mistake that I made was starting the business without actually having a product to sell. Because I found out later on in that year, 2015, that I had to pay taxes on a business that I started and I didn't even sell anything. So that was me just not really knowing what I was doing. I just knew I had this vision and this dream. And so I just started the business and started to figure things out as I went along. The number one thing I will tell you as an entrepreneur, if you have a vision and you have a product that you're gonna bring to market, is that if you visualize and manifest this vision of this product and chase it and don't give up and keep going, there's gonna be people that will come into your life and help you. And it's very true. Throughout the whole beginning process, which was the hardest part of Dinos, there was always somebody to come in and help. Whether it's just advice or whatever, there was always somebody that came in with a little bit of advice just to get me over the next hurdle. And oh, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing this right, I need to change this. Whether it's figuring out when I actually got to 2016 and actually started selling the product, and things came more down to numbers as far as margins and whatnot. Well, there's one big thing that I can tell you that a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand when they come out of the gate, is the difference between a margin and a markup. There's a big difference between a margin and a markup. We can talk about that later, but it's a huge difference, margin and markup. I meet entrepreneurs all the time that don't know, I'll ask them, I'll say, well, what's your margin? And they'll say 300%. And I'm like, well, you can't have a 300% margin. You can only have 100% margin. That's only if you get something that you're selling free. It's the only way to make 100% margin. So there's a big difference between margin and markup that you have to understand as a business owner to have a product that you can make money off of. Because to have a successful product, you have to be able to make money and make a profit off of it. If you can't make money and make a profit, then you have a hobby. So let's go back to 2015 when I started the business. And so at the end of 2015, I found out that I had to pay taxes on something that I wasn't even selling. I wasn't even selling the product yet. But I had to figure out all these things on my own. I had to find a graphic designer, and my little guy right here, I literally paid a guy in the kitchen $100 to draw that. It came to me in a vision. I remember waking up in the middle of the night because I was like, okay, Dinos, it needs to be country themed or whatever. Me as a kid, I used to fish every day when I was a kid. So one day in the middle of the night, I remember waking up and I'm like, oh, a little Huckleberry Finn character with a fish over, fishing pole and a little fish dangling on it or whatever. And I went in and I paid the guy in the kitchen. I'm like, hey, you can draw? He's like, yeah. Because I've seen him sketch stuff up before, and I was like, draw this little dude with a fishing pole and like he's walking. And so I got all the original artwork from that, but it was cool, and everybody thought I was crazy when I gave the guy in the kitchen $100 to draw a little picture. Everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, oh, you really paid him $100 to draw a little dude on a piece of paper? I'm like, yeah, because I'm gonna do something with it. And so this was a part of, then I had to figure out, how do I get this little guy drawn on a piece of paper, onto a logo, onto a bottle, onto a t-shirt? And I didn't know anything about that, so I know what it is now. It's called an illustrator. I had to find an illustrator, somebody that can transfer that into artwork on a computer. So I found a guy that he was high up in Papa John's, and he had all the right connections. So we took little Danny, and that's what his name is, little Danny. And so we put him onto the first labels, and it took me about a year and a half to go from the idea, a little over a year and a half, to go from the idea to actually putting it in a bottle. And so when I actually got it into the bottle, it was late 2016, and I started to go to farmers markets. And I had in one little store that there's 4 little grocery stores in Louisville, and I would go and I would demo the product. And basically, everybody loved the flavor, everybody loved the product. But what I started to figure out, I was listening to why people would not buy it. Number one, people would pick it up and be like, oh, is it sold here? Yeah, it's gonna be here. Okay, well maybe I'll get it next time, and they put it back down. Well, that to me is telling me, well, if they're not putting it in their cart right now, there's something wrong with it. There's a reason why they're not buying it. And so, did you bring my water in?
No,
By
I didn't.
chance?
No.
So there's a reason why they're not buying it, and I was like, well, could it be?
I'll get you.
I appreciate you. So I'm like, there's a reason why they're not buying it, and I know it's not the flavor, because there's nothing like this. There's nothing like Dinos on the market. There's no flavor that exists like it. And I'm like, it can't be that. It has to be the fact that they looked at the back of the label and it had a little bit of sugar in it originally. And they would say, oh, it's got sugar. Like, sorry, I'm not doing sugar. And I'm like, well, it's only that much. You can't even see it in there if I showed it to you. They just don't do it because it says it on the label. And so the other thing was price. So like originally it was in a bigger bottle and it was like $7, $8, or $9 depending on what store it was, and people wouldn't buy it because of price. And I'm like, okay, well I need to tweak the label a little bit. I need to pump the brakes on everything I'm doing. This product is not ready for the market. I need to change this. I need to take that little pinch of sugar that I had in there out, because it's not even changing the flavor profile. All it's doing is making a customer not buy the product because they see sugar. And so I got to a smaller package and it was priced right. I got to the $5 price point. And so basically I eliminated, and I took the sugar out. And so now it's keto friendly. And I was like, now the only reason for somebody not to buy it is because they didn't like the flavor. Well, me believing in my product, I'm like, and that's like less than 1% of people who try it. I call them 1%ers. So there's, if you don't like Dinos, you're in the 1%. But, so once I got the product finalized and got the new label and got it to the new container size, thank you. Once I got it to the new container size and the label was revised, this took me, I think it was about another 6 or 7 months. So in my eyes, my business didn't really start until I had this new product that was really ready for the market that I could put my 100% behind. And that wasn't until June 1st, 2017. So June 1st, 2017, my dad was always in the background, like, you need to go do a flea market, and I'm like, I'm going to when I'm ready for it. Like, I was never ready for it because I wasn't ready to 100% commit, like quit my job and everything and just do nothing but Dinos. But what I did once I got it packaged and repackaged, which was another hard thing to do, what I'm getting at with the repackaging, I had to go to these little stores that I was in and be like, hey, I'll change my packaging, I'm changing my pricing, I'm gonna steal these 5 bottles you got left and I'm gonna change them out and I'm gonna give you more and I'm gonna deduct that 3 cents off each bottle, I'm gonna make up the difference. And it was just like, it made me kind of look bad. It made me look like I didn't know what I was doing because I was like changing things. I was like, oh, here's new product, new label. I'm gonna adjust the price with you, and we're just, I'm in there making a big deal about a product that they don't even sell much of, and they're only making a few bucks off of. It's not a big deal, but it was a big deal to me. And so I got this new product June 1st, 2017, and so I went and like I said, I had the product prior, and I would do farmers markets, and I would sell $300, $400, $500 in a day in a matter of like 4 or 5 hours, but that was it. It wasn't enough to quit your job. It wasn't enough money to, that's what I'm gonna do full-time farmers markets. And so I had always had to have a side job bartending just to make ends meet, just to, make the next few bucks so I could buy the next batch of rosemary online, and the next batch of cumin, and the next batch of garlic, and the next batch of this, just so I could get the next step of my business. Well, so June 1st, 2017, registered for my first little flea market. It was a flea market in town in Louisville, and it's a flea market that they do like 5 times a year. And so I went out there with expectations. I'm like, I'm gonna sell $1,000 bucks. Well, I ended up selling like 3,500 bucks. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm like, this is how I can make my business right. So from that point on, I started scheduling little flea markets and any sort of like, hunting shows or home and garden shows. The next show I did after that first flea market was actually the state fair, the Kentucky State Fair. And it was like 10 days straight from like 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 12-hour days. And I'm out there sampling mashed potatoes. So for 10 days, I'm making mashed potatoes with instant potatoes, like boiling water and like making these little potatoes, putting them in trays, and out there just telling people, hey, try my seasoning, come try these potatoes. And so people that would try it, like it was like 30, probably 35%, I would say, would buy the product. And so what I was doing, and I ended up selling $9,000 at the first state fair. This was 2017, in August 2017. Ended up selling like $9,000. So I knew that I could make the business survive by doing these trade shows. And trade shows or flea markets, festivals, whatever you want to call it. I was like, I'm so done with bartending. I was so done with it. I was like, I'm quitting that. I don't ever want to serve another drink to anybody. All I want to do is sell seasoning. And so I started finding any little, even if it was a super small little flea market that was 20 bucks to get in, and there was only 500 people coming through that weekend, and my bank account's in the negative, but I need to know, I know I can go make $500-600 bucks at this little flea market. I would go do it because I didn't want to serve drinks. I wanted to sell seasoning. And so I was always chasing this dream, and I was always chasing my bank account. What I mean by that is I was always in the negative, it seemed like, for like the first year, like that 2017 to 2018, like I was always in the negative. I was always, robbing Peter to pay Paul, borrow $100, $200 from a friend. I'll get it to you after this weekend. Like it was a true grind just to get to the next point, because it was like every time I would buy all this product and get it into, containers, the next thing I know is I'm selling through it, and I had to live off of the money I was generating also. So it was a real grind to, get that next pool of money so you could buy more inventory, because I just kept getting bigger and better shows to generate more money to buy more product to get to the next level. And so traveling these little trade shows and whatnot is what got Dinos to where it is today. And I was doubling my business from, of course I doubled in 2016 because I didn't sell anything. So 2017, I think that was like $40,000 that I did. And in 2018, I did $120,000. And then 2019 was like $220,000. And then I was projected in 2020, I was projecting, because I got into some of the biggest trade shows in the country, I was projecting to do $500,000. And so COVID came. So COVID came along, and this was, early March. We were actually 1 hour away from this trade show up in Michigan, up in Gaylord, Michigan. There was this big hunting show we were going to do, and we're 1 hour away and got notified that the show's canceled due to COVID. So, I don't know if y'all are familiar with my social media, but I got my sidekick, Toothpick Timmy, that helps me. And so I was literally, when we were driving back to Louisville, I'm like, you have to go find another gig, because he was not a full-time employee for me. He was my helper, and I paid him a commission. So at this point, my only real source of revenue at this time was doing the shows. So like if I would have broke my leg or something, I would have been out of commission. I don't know what I would have done. Dinos might not be what it is today. But I told Toothpick, I'm like, you gotta find something to do, because I'm not gonna have this revenue, I'm not gonna have the money coming in if we can't do the shows. And so it was like, I remember making a Facebook video being like, oh, it's time for Plan B. Because I knew I had all these people out there that loved my product. But I was like, now it's time for Plan B. My Plan B was social media. I was already making Facebook videos and doing Facebook Live, and I already had Instagram. I think in March 2020, I had 4,000 followers on Instagram, 12,000 followers on Facebook, and maybe like 1,000 on YouTube. And so, but I knew that the only way for me to survive was social media. And there's Gary Vandercheck out there. I don't know if y'all familiar with Gary B. You should watch him. He might cuss a lot. He's very in tune with what's always going on in social media. Like he's on the ball. Well, I remember watching some of his little videos being like, if you have a business product, if you have a product and you're a business owner and you're not on TikTok, you don't know what you're doing. You gotta get on TikTok. And he's like, TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. If you're not posting 4 times a day on TikTok right now and you have a product, you don't know what you're doing. You're dropping the ball. So I was like, okay, well, let's Plan B. I want to start doing TikTok. So I would literally make like 3-4 videos a day at TikTok, and I was posting them. And you know, at this point, I'm like, if I can do $200 a day online, I can survive this COVID until it goes away, and then we can start doing the shows again. And so, after a couple weeks, you know, I was doing my $200-300 a day. I was like, all right, I'll survive. And then one day I made it was like a crab cake video on TikTok, and it offended half of Maryland because I didn't make the crab cakes the right way. And I wasn't using Old Bay. Everybody's like, what's this Dinos? Dinos is trash, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Well, creating controversy. Well, when we create controversy, you also create customers, I guess, because of my sales was like $1,000 that day. And I'm like, okay, I need to do more stuff like this. And so, and then they kind of like triggered the algorithm on TikTok, I guess, because then it was like every video I was posting, I was getting more attention. And then I was getting more attention, I was getting more sales. And then all of a sudden, you know, it was like the $200 a day was nothing. It was like $200 by noon. And then it was like, you know, we're averaging like $2,000, $3,000 a day. And this comes back to where I say, if you have a product and you have a dream and you're chasing it, there's always going to be people that come in certain points and like help you. Like everything happens for a reason, right? Like thank God my dad named me Dan and not Jack. You know, Dinos, it's a great name. It's the one thing that like, it hit me like a ton of bricks when I go back to my aha moment. I'm like, Dinos, I'm like, that's a killer name. Well, I also had to go to the USPTO, which I know what that is now, to do a trademark search. If you guys ever want to, if you have a product, you have an idea, and you want to know if the name's already taken, you can go to USPTO.com, super easy. Do a basic name search, and it'll tell you if somebody already owns the name. So, just, did y'all know that? USPTO. So, it's the United States Patent and Trademark. So, if there's ever a name you got in your head and you're like, oh, I wonder if that could be a brand, USPTO. So, and then getting into like trademarking, patenting, copywriting, you're all familiar with all that stuff, like what each one is, what a trademark is, what a copyright is. Okay. So, yeah, with Dinos, there's no point for me to ever patent the recipe. Maybe if I was big like Coca-Cola one day, they just do it because they have the money to do it. But like literally somebody could change the 1 grain of salt and then it's a different product. So Dinos is trademarked because what they can't do is take the name. Somebody can make a product that tastes just like Dinos, but they can't call it Dinos. So I got a little off subject there. Where was I at?
People come into your life like around 2020 that
Oh,
maybe.
yes, like people like you, Meredith, she's my
Phil.
vice president. So, yeah, people will come into your life. So I had a friend of mine who's always been a business guy, and he was like, hey, I got a buddy, I bet he could help you. He owns a marketing company, and he's the type of guy that would like do something special for you. Like, you know, he might revamp your whole website for like 10% revenue or something. And I was like, okay, like that's kind of what I need. I don't have much money, but I need somebody like that. Somebody that's willing to invest their time and get compensated for their results. And so I was like, yeah, I'd like to talk to that guy. So that guy that I talked to is now my business partner. And he owned a marketing company for 20 years. And so basically, initially, like everything was going great for Dinos, and we made this partnership that was more of like, he was gonna invest time and money in the website, and I was gonna give him a little bit of money, and they were gonna take a little bit of revenue. Well, then the next thing you know, the TikTok was still like going skyrocket, going crazy. And basically we talked about like, hey, let's just do business partnership. Because here's the one thing I've known about myself the whole time. Because all I knew is I had this vision, I had this dream, and all I had to do is get to the next point. Rob Peter paid Paul to get to this next show, to get out of the overdraft from a bank account, to get this next batch of product. If I get this next batch of product, I know I can go here and sell $10,000 and I can pay this off, and just let's get to this next point. Well, I made this partnership because I knew Dinos was about to change through social media. My TikTok was going crazy, my YouTube was going crazy, like everything was just growing, and the product's awesome. And so, and the marketability of Dinos is just awesome. And so, we basically made this partnership. And I guess one thing in business that I would tell people, and it's one thing that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, that maybe, anybody can be an entrepreneur, but can you be a successful entrepreneur? You have to be able to identify what your qualities are. I know what my qualities, I know what I'm really great at, and that's what I do as the owner of Dinos, is I make social media content because that's what I'm great at. And I know what I'm not good at, and that's actually running the business. So part of my partnership with the Crosby Interactive was that I don't want to be the business owner. All this crunching numbers, all this Robin Peter, PayPal, and doing all this, it's like, okay, now we're successful, so now I want to let you handle that. Because you're the guy that's good at that, not me. I just knew that I needed to get Dinos to a certain point, and that's what I did. And so that was a part of the partnership, was that I don't want to be the CEO. I just want to be the owner. I want to be the face of the business. I don't want to be the CEO. I don't want to run the numbers, the books, whatever. So, as being an entrepreneur, identify what you're really good at and try and focus on that. But if you're going to start a business from the ground up like I did, you kind of got to be good at everything. You got to learn a little bit about everything. And you will. I mean, if you start a business, you'll learn everything because you have to. And Google is always your best friend. You can learn anything from Google. Just ask Google. It's answered a lot of questions for me. So, yeah. So now, currently, the reason why I'm standing here is because your father, Matt, is helping us. He's our broker for Kroger's. So we're getting ready to go nationwide in Kroger's in this basically April. We're going nationwide in Walmart, we're going in BJ's, we're going in all these stores. And so now, Dinos, it's not like, oh, now we're here and like everything's successful. No, it's just growing. it's all, you know, in the beginning, it was like, okay, well, I just gotta get through this to get to here, I just gotta get through this to get to here. Now it's just on a different level, now it's a big business, now we have 50 team members, now we have, you know, and we're looking to work, I mean, we might have 200 people that work for Dinos by the end of next year, could even be more than that. Cause now we're trying to talk to maybe like government, get government assistance, maybe invest in the Dinos so we can build like huge manufacturing and like do it all ourselves. Because what the way Dinos has always operated is we use co-packers. Do you guys know what a co-packer is? Co-packer is contract packaging. So basically, we don't make Dinos at Dinos. We use a co-packer, which is right next to our warehouse. We have a huge warehouse where we have all of our raw materials, our caps, our bottles, our lids, our raw ingredients, you know, rosemary, ginger, whatever. And then there's the co-packer. So the co-packer is right next to us, and they basically charge us for the processing of weighing out the ingredients, putting it into a blender, making sure it's all blended correctly, putting it into a bottle, making sure it's sealed correctly, putting on the lot number. The lot number is like the actual ingredients, everything that went into it. So if there's ever a recall on a specific product, we can say, okay, that product was in these lot numbers. So there's a lot that goes into the manufacturing. And you know, all the like books and stuff that I've read, or like articles in like Entrepreneur Magazine, is you don't want to do the manufacturing yourself till you get to like really big, because there's a whole lot of headaches when you're doing the manufacturing yourself. So cut out all the headaches and use a co-packer. So somebody that wants to start a barbecue sauce or a seasoning company, or if you want to make jelly, or if you want to make jams or any sort of sauces or soups or whatever, you would want to use a co-packer. Basically what they do is they can do everything for you, or they can just do the processing. So our co-packer just does the processing. We supply everything, so we save a little bit of money there because we do the work of sourcing all the ingredients and all the materials. So he's not putting an increase on the margin. What I mean by that is a lot of co-packers, they want to source everything for you. They want to buy all your ingredients, they want to buy all your labels, they want to buy your caps and everything, and they want to put 10% on everything. So they're not only making a processing fee, but they're also making extra money off of sourcing all the ingredients. So if you ever had a product, how you can save money is source your own ingredients and have the co-packer just charge you a processing fee. But not all of them will do that. So you might have to do some sweet talking. But I think I'm pretty much covering everything, telling you the story about, I guess, just my grind. But what questions, I'm sure y'all got a lot of questions, because there's so much involved with, you know, just from the manufacturing up to the marketing up to the understanding margins. But, yeah.
I was gonna say, you mentioned that you had one mistake, which was starting your business before you had your actual product. What other mistakes did you make, or things that would you have changed if you had the chance to sort of start Dinos again with what you know now?
Correct. I would be a great business consultant, because I could anybody that wanted to get into the food packaged products, I could help you cut a lot of corners and avoid making mistakes. And probably the first real mistake that I made that cost me money was on labels. So here I am, spent 1.5 years of my life trying to get this product into a bottle. I'm a very attention to detail person, so I'm always picking things apart. And so with my graphic designer, I'm like, oh, you know, I slipped on this. We need to change the little dude a little bit. We need to change the label like this. He's like, dude, just be happy with something. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not right. So we spent all this time on this label, going back and forth, you know, let me sleep on it, and then let me sleep on it again, then we make another little change, and then let me sleep on it again, we make another change. All right, it's good to go. So when I went in to talk with the label company, Well, there's a difference in label print. You can do a litho print, or you can do a digital print. Does anybody know the difference between litho and digital? Okay. Well, litho would basically be where it's like they basically make like a stamp, ink stamp. It's basically like a stamp, and it runs through this ink, and it just, it runs really fast, and it just prints these labels, but it's running through ink. Is where digital is digitally done. The digital is more expensive, but when you're talking about labels, I mean, when I say more expensive, like you can do a litho print for 10 cents compared to a digital might be 12 cents. So it's not a huge difference, but it is when you're running millions of them or thousands or whatever. Well, I ended up going with the litho print. Well, the reason why it cost me money is because it was $1,000 to have these little stamps made for my labels. Well, I was sitting here thinking, well, I just spent over 1.5 years of my life getting this product to where it's ready to go. And so the lady that was helping me get my labels done, she was like just hired on or something, because she didn't tell me don't do litho, do the digital. She was like, well, whatever you want to do, here's your 2 options. Well, I chose to do litho. Well, litho ended up costing me money because, like I said, after I got out there with my original product and started sampling and selling it and whatnot, I figured out what needed to be changed. So I basically pumped the brakes and spent another 8 months redesigning the product till I got to where it needed to be. And so that was my first $1,000 mistake, and I still have those. I think I've shown them to you guys before. I still have these little plates, and I'm like, I want to frame those one day, because it was my first $1,000 that I basically burned. Because it was, me at that point in my business, I didn't have $1,000 to burn. And that was, I'm still kind of upset at the lady at the printing house that why didn't she advise me not to do litho, to do digital, that hey, this is your first round of labels, you're probably going to want to change it, because you can't change the litho because it's on these stamps. Like, you can't change it. Digital, you can change anything. So if you ever come up with a product, start out digital print. Another question? Did that answer your question?
Oh,
That was my next mistake. I know I've got tons more. But anybody else got another question?
What did you major in college, and do you think it helps what you're doing today?
Be honest.
I told you I was never a school person. Like, I went to a private high school, all boys high school in Kentucky, Trinity, may have heard of it. But I graduated 244 out of 246. I never applied myself in school. I was always a very street smarts person. I just knew how to make things happen. And so when I went to school, I didn't take my ACT, I didn't take my SAT. I thought I was gonna be a professional pool player. That's no joke. Well, I got in a head-on collision, broke this bone. The only thing that happened is my hand went forward and this finger was sticking out like that. Well, in pool, you gotta make a bridge. Well, my bridge was totally done. I couldn't play pool anymore. So it was a sign from God to me, everything happens for a reason. And it was like, go to school. So I went to school. I went to Lexington Community College, and I applied myself, and I made the dean's list for like 2 straight years. So it was like almost straight A's. I was on the dean's list. I really applied myself, but I was so far behind from high school, because I never applied myself in high school, that I was on like the 5-6 year program in college. So I was like, I can keep going to school, or I can go back and start making money with my family, which I've told you my whole family is in insurance. So that's what I chose to do. I was like, I'm gonna go back and get a head start on everybody else that's in school, and I'm gonna go start making money. Well, insurance I didn't like. And then so I got into manufacturing. That I loved, but then I was like, I want something different. So I went into the bartending. Bartending, you make great money, but it's not a lifestyle I would ever recommend. But to answer your question about school, what I was gonna, back then, I don't even think it's a degree that you can get, but it was a real estate degree. So I thought it was real estate. But, like I said, I wanted to get in the insurance business, so I dropped off the dean's list. One of the only people that can tell you that they dropped out of college on the dean's list. Put that feather in my cap. But, so,
I think it helped you identify like things you didn't want to do, which sometimes in life is really as important as what, finding what you truly do want to do.
I can tell you this, if I had to do it all over again, if I had to go back into where you're sitting at now, I would want to be an engineer. I would totally 100% want to be an engineer. Just because I'm past, that I worked in manufacturing and whatnot. I was like, I miss my calling, I could have been an engineer. But that's what I would do if I had to go back. Learn business, learn engineering. But hopefully I answered your question. Next question.
On TikTok, how did you get people to stop and actually buy the product? Because I know it's super easy to just keep on scrolling. You just completely forget.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the marketing. When I say that Dinos is a super fun marketing brand, like you don't know till you Dano. When you can plug that into people's heads, I think sometimes people, if you read through some of the comments on some of our videos, people are like, you don't know till you Dano. Like when TikTok first started and like it was going crazy for me, that was the big thing that I always used to say, is because, not at that point, not millions of people would try my product, it was just a few, and people would be like, oh, this season's garbage or whatever, and I'd be like, well, you don't know till you Dano, and then other people would chime in and be like, it really is good, like you don't know till you Dano. So I think the keys to being successful on like having like a successful TikTok product or online product is to just not have a good product, but it's the marketability. So let's go all the way back to my aha moment. When I was 2016, I was like, Danos. To me, I was like, great name, Danos. Well, let's go to 2017 where I did my first state fair. Well, I knew I had this awesome product. I had no idea the marketability of it until 2017. I was at the state fair, and I remember this little old lady came up, and she was trying to sample, the mashed potatoes. She was like, "That's dang good." And I was like, "Yeah, it's low sodium, it's all natural, there's no sugar. It's $5." And she's like, "No, it's dang good." And I was like, "Yeah, and this is the deal we're doing on it today." And she was like, "No." And she like pointed behind me, because my banner was up. She was like, "It's damn good." And I was like, okay. And I was like, "Damn good." And I was like, "Damn almighty, fantastic." And I was like, wow. And then it was like, you don't know till you might be the best dance season you ever had. And it just kept coming out. And when I say things happen for a reason, I'm like, wow, okay. This is it's meant to be. My whole thing with Danos was oh, I'm gonna change the world with the season. And then when I say, if you think you got an idea and you chase it and you manifest it, people are gonna come into your life and things will happen for a reason. I really think I was put on this earth to make seasoning, because it was not only did I have this awesome recipe, it had a great name, which I had no idea the name was as great as it is until 2 years later. But it was just things happened for a reason. The whole thing, how I can use the low sodium and the no sugar and the keto. It's what actually didn't make sense to me is when I got my first packaging, in late 2016, what didn't make sense to me is I thought I was doing something wrong, because I was I had low sodium, like no sugar and stuff on the label, and it's like, well, how's no other seasoning doing this? Why are all these other seasonings, why do they have chemicals and all this stuff in their ingredients? Why aren't they just making an awesome seasoning blend like I am? Like, it didn't make sense to me. Seriously thought I was doing something wrong. I remember calling Paul's Fruit Market when I told you they had 4 stores in Louisville, and I told the lady, I was like, don't put those on the shelf yet, because I'm not 100% sure I can say low sodium on the label. I could, it's just nobody else was doing it. No other seasoning company chose to use that as their niche, as their marketing, like, way to, like, say I'm different. And I was like, I gotta be doing something wrong. How am I the only one that's figured this out? And so that was my big thing, was low sodium, all natural, no sugar. So you gotta understand, when you're building a business, you gotta understand how to build value. You have to build value into a product. Does that mean we're done?
You can finish up your point.
You have to learn how to build value into a product. Make someone feel good about buying your product. Make them feel like not only did they get something great, but they won something, they're a part of something, which they are. I mean, it's the best seasoning out, the best Dan seasoning out there. But yeah, build the value in the product was everything. So when we would sample on, a piece of chicken, I would have my ingredients on a tray, and I'd have a bottle with a little bit of salt in it, and say, add some of the salt in the bottle. All these natural ingredients. So basically what we were doing was building a no-brainer for these people. Their taste buds are saying, wow, this is amazing, and then I'm saying, look how healthy it is. It's a no-brainer, and that's why we sell more seasoning than anybody out there in the world. We'll be the number one selling seasoning at the end of 2023, I promise. If you haven't had it, you got it now, so enjoy.
Yeah, all 3 flavors are in there, so
Yeah.
y'all enjoy. And if y'all have other questions or whatever, you can reach out to us. I'll have, Henry has our contact. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for coming in.